It's Catherine back with part two of this material from Kevin Tedeschi. I thought to break it in half just in case. I'm not sure if it's going to upload well if I put it all in one MP3. So we're back. The next part is why are ideals important? In part, the answer to what establishes the why. Since ideals shape our very lives, our experiences, even what we're becoming, by definition, then they must be extremely important. But Casey goes one step further. Oftentimes people were told, then the most important experience of this or any individual entity is to first know what is thy ideal spiritually. 357-13 reading. Not only is it important, it's the most important thing we can do. Essentially, the reason for this importance is threefold. 1. Ideals direct and shape the impulse of spirit in our lives. 2. Ideals can help us deal with and hold us accountable to those experiences which we need in order to come to know ourselves. And 3. Ideals can help us work through the confusion we've come to call freedom of choice. Ideals direct and shape the impulse of spirit in our lives. The entire oft repeated mind is the builder quote is as follows. Spirit is the life, mind is the builder, and physical is the result. Although we might be vastly simplifying the terminology, the word spirit, according to the vocabulary of the readings, is really the creative impulse that can be utilized positively or negatively. It is the life force that can be directed through the activity of the mind and will for selfless good or selfish evil pursuits. The mind is the mechanism through which we decide where and how we'll focus our creative energies, even our attention. The end result of focusing this creative impulse in a specific direction or activity, consciously or unconsciously, is that we draw certain experiences, even people, into our lives. Our physical material world becomes the stage, the result, upon which we can see the activity of spirit directed to the power of our own minds played out before our very eyes. For whatever that may be first conceived in spirit, it is acted upon by mind, dependent upon what the mind of the entity holds as its ideal, or as to what form or manner it would give by and through what spirit it would build in its mental self. Edgar Casey reading 29. Edgar Casey reading 2995-1. This same individual was told in her reading, you can make thyself just as happy or as miserable as you like. How many of us would ever consider simply walking into one of those multi-cinema movie theaters without even looking at a marquee, purchase a ticket for whatever show the attendant happened to feel like selling us, then simply sit down without even caring what it was we were going to watch? Yet this is the very experience we encounter in our lives when we lack the commitment to establish a conscious ideal. Second, ideals help us deal with and hold us accountable to these experiences we need in order to come to know ourselves. Once an ideal has been chosen, a pattern, a motivating influence is set in place that will assist us in learning whatever lesson it is we need to whatever lesson we need in order to move forward, that next step necessary for our own personal growth. To complicate our understanding, however, once an ideal has been chosen, our life sometimes draws experiences seeming diametrically opposed to what it is we said we were interested in building. Working with the example of love, if we decide that we need to be more loving in our lives, we might soon discover that we're suddenly surrounded by individuals who are either unloving themselves or a real challenge to us to try to love. This experience would not mean that we had chosen the wrong ideal, rather, it would simply indicate that we were drawing towards us individuals and events that would help us learn how to become more loving. Ultimately, the only way we can experience real learning at a soul level is by interacting and connecting with and service to one another. The readings challenge us not to give up on the ideal we have chosen once the real work begins. We're accountable for our choices and we'll see some results if we stick with them. This is the unfailing, the unfaltering principle, the law of love. Forsake not those principles that make for the satisfying of that thou hast set as an ideal. Be patient, and thy efforts will not go unrewarded. Edgar Cayce reading 802-2. Ideals can help us work through the confusion we've come to call freedom of choice. Ideals can be a wonderful tool for making decisions. Whatever we find ourselves in a state of confusion because we're unable to make a choice, whether it's a major decision such as a change in careers or a relatively important decision such as how to spend the afternoon, our ideals can help. Simply weigh each choice against the ideal. For example, if our ideal is love and we're suddenly presented with the unbelievable prospector 2 job opportunities at once, we could ask ourselves which one of these jobs is most in keeping with a loving person would do, and which one of these would help an individual become more loving. But more than helping us make simple choices, our ideals can lead us out of the confusion of what we should be doing or where we should be going, or even what God would have us do with our lives. The ideal helps guide us toward the next meaningful step in our spiritual journeys. 2 oft-repeated quotes from the reading are, line upon line, precept upon precept, and do what you know to do, and the next step will be given. As we begin working with whatever understanding we possess, our path is made clear. For as you apply day by day that you know, that is the next step, the next act, the next experience shown thee. Reading 262-104. How can I work with ideals? First, know thy ideal, spiritually, mentally, materially. Not as much as what you would like others to be, but what your ideal relationship to others. For he that is the greatest is servant of all, as the law of cause and effect. Edgar Cayce reading 1998-1. Elsewhere we read, for the ideal is not so much what others may do for you, but what you may do for others. Edgar Cayce reading 1646-2. The challenge of working with ideals seems to be one where we're encouraged to move beyond simply a personal intellectual exercise to one where we're encouraged to move beyond simply a personal intellectual map out how our ideal will affect our interactions with others, ourselves, even our surrounding. The key to making a spiritual ideal practical in our material lives is to again work with the ideal that spirit is the life, mind is the builder, and physical is the result. The first step entails taking a sheet of paper and drawing 3 columns. Label the first, my spiritual ideal. Label the second, my mental attitudes, and label the third, my physical activities. Although we're encouraged to choose a challenging spiritual ideal, it is recommended that we choose something we can understand, work with, and see progress manifest in our lives. Ultimately, a spiritual ideal is the highest spiritual quality or attainment that we can hope to have motivating in our lives. I might add, right now, in the near future. For some, this might be the pattern set by Jesus. For others, it might be a quality such as love. In order to really begin working with ideals, however, we should choose that quality or attribute currently missing or lacking in our own lives, in our relationships with others. For example, perhaps I need to be more patient or forgiving or more understanding in my interaction with other people. Ideals grow and change as we do, so it's important to pick something with which we can really begin to work. For this exercise, let's say that our spiritual ideal is currently going to be forgiveness, as forgiveness will be written on the first column labeled my spiritual